In a month for gloomy, doomy records, the pick of the bunch, in my estimation, comes from Ahab with the Coral Tombs. It has been 7.5 years since the last Ahab album, about as long as That's Not Metal itself has been around, and I have been wanting an Ahab album all that time. They have been one of those bands where I've sat and rocked in my chair and gone, when are we getting a new Ahab album? For ages. Elliot, you asked me if this was going to be something we were covering, and I was like, yeah, but that leads me to believe that you are a fan as well.
Oh, I love Ahab. I love them so much. The Giant is one of my favourite, maybe just straight doom metal records ever. And to me, when I think of that time of like 2010 to 2014, underground metal, The Giant, it pops straight into my head along with like Sentence to Life or Sunbather. It's just, for me, that is the high point, but Call of the Wretched Seas and The Boats of the Glen Carrig, both of them have entered fairly regular rotation whenever I reach for something in this style. So yeah, same as you, for the whole 7 years it was just Ahab, 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 please, 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 this has to be the year.
Yeah, and it's because they're a band that absolutely no one can provide what they do. Like, they are a band in possession of one of the most cohesively realised musical identities in the entire metal genre. And I don't say that lightly, and then considering it's still expanding and growing what that actually does as well, particularly impressive. But like, even their, kind of aesthetic and thematic identity, it's so easy with bands when they like write and base their band around a certain thing to just use that as their obvious go-to defining feature forever. Like, hey, did you know Amon Amarth are Vikings? But like, Ahab sound like and let that shape their actual records in a way that for me is on a par with a band like Nile or someone. Ahab, if you are not aware, they haven't been around for 7.5 years, so you might well have missed them. Their thing is that they write nautical funeral doom. They make these really long-form layered albums that are all based around famous nautical literature or real-life stories. So obviously their name comes from Moby Dick. Each of their albums is based around a story or a novel. The Coral Tombs is their 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea album. It's got this really cool artwork with like these alien-looking submarines and marine landscapes. And, they fall right in line with my interests, maritime expeditions and shipwrecks and all this stuff. I love that. But their records form these incredible worlds to a level that, in my estimation, is only matched by some of the real, like, legend bands that we talk about. Sam, we just spoke about something that genre-wise just doesn't capture me, and I find pretty lukewarm and unexciting. You tweeted a couple of days ago that you have come to the conclusion that Funeral Doom and you are incompatible, which I can only assume was prompted by listening to this. Nothing about this. Float your boat.
Well, like, I say that, like, there are, again, things about like Ahab that I find really cool and interesting. I'm a big fan of like nautical, aquatic horror in particular. The terror of the deep. I've been on a Captain Nemo hype these last few days with my films I've watched. Like
was that prompted by this?
I was prompted by this. No, it is.
That's
like,
nice.
And
They've done something. Yeah.
Like I said, I watched the 1950s 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea movie and the League of Extraordinary Gentlemen. Like, because I wanted to get some Nautilus in me, but yeah, I'm so down with that side of things. I mean, that's really cool. I think you are spot on in that they do sonically encapsulate that perfectly. This sounds like some ancient, like just some deep, unknowable, aquatic, like horror, like some journey through the deep. Like totally 10 out of 10. Now that the core sound, and I'm not saying it's bad. Like this isn't one where I'm gonna kind of be like, I don't think it, like, catch me in the way that Catatonia does, because I just think this is so just not tuned to my ears that I can recognise, like, a lot of this is great, but I just don't want anything to do with it.
Yeah, and that's fair, because, like, it is an extreme end of a genre, right?
Yeah,
like,
this is way far in the extreme end of, like, again, I'm coming around to more and more Doom, but this is so far into that, like...
Well, like, I mean, like, Funeral Doom is, like, inherently, it's an out-there form of metal, right? And, like, if you don't tap into its specific wavelength, I mean, God, we got all of the fucking C puns today, but, like, it's a difficult, challenging kind of music.
Yes, it is, yeah.
I will say that not only were Ahab arguably the greatest Funeral Doom band when they were purely practicing that style, but they have kind of become something else. And, like, we covered the Dream Unending record a couple of shows ago, and we were talking about how that's someone who has taken something that's like arguably adjacent to Funeral Doom, but has injected it with a sensibility that turns it totally into something else.
And I got on with that, like...
Yeah, and again, because there's a brightness to that this doesn't have, but like, Ahab have like the records to actually show a trajectory like that, rather than like a new project just starting off with a fresh take, because they go from utterly merciless slow motion whales fighting to essentially a prog metal band who are still basing their ideas in Funeral Doom, and it's there that they have become just all round one of the best bands around in any corner of metal to me. Because like, even though like I've discovered in the last few months there's a whole group of Ahab fans who think that everything past their pure Funeral Doom stuff is like laughably bad, and I want to fight these people, because there I was in my bubble for the last 10 years thinking like everyone thought The Giant was a masterpiece, like me and you, Elliot, and that everybody loved the Boats of the Glencarrig, but no. And I saw a bit of that online when this album was announced, but now it's actually out and the actual reception that matters has been superb, and it's like, yeah, this band deserved to be more than just boxed away in that little corner with you lot. And let's not forget that this record starts off fucking blasting. Like, when it comes in, it is fucking colossal and genuinely scary.
Oh yeah, I mean, for all you were saying about how they become more proggy and moved away from the pure Funeral Doom thing, this might be maybe their most sort of desolate and joyless album ever. I don't know if that's just my experience of it, and
I probably not more than the Call of the Wretched Sea, but certainly in their sort of latter phase.
Yeah, maybe that's more what I'm comparing it to. And it doesn't really get more desolate and joyless than, as you say, those first two songs, which are just fucking, they're mean. Like
they're my favourite two songs on the record. Like, I think Professor Aranax is what's it? I'm gonna have to get the full song title. Professor Aranax's Descent into the Vast Oceans. Like, that frantic opening part was kind of actually not what I expected from it. It was way more manic and like unhinged. And then after that, when it sort of lumbers into like the more colossal, like big, thick doomy sound, I was like, oh, okay, cool. But it is like terrifying and intense as an opener.
Like, it's just that guttural, just like kind of crashing in on top of you. Traded off like some harsher screens with the guy from the black metal band Ultha is on there, and I thought it was so striking how this album opens the exact opposite way their last couple albums have done. Because like, if you start The Boats of the Glencarrig, it's so lush and colourful and dreamy, and this presses just a panic button at the start in a way that it like never have before. But then you get a minute into it and it's like that veil part and the clean vocals and the guitar just like seep in and wash you away. It's an amazingly dynamic record, which I think is what Ahab do better than just about any other band related to the term Funeral Doom. Like, there are guitar harmonies in this that like take off and combine with the singing in ways that are relatable to bands like, you know, Elder, or even like certain bits of Old Baroness or whatever, as much as a Bell Witch. And like in Professor Aranax, when the music really steps up a notch and goes for that higher range, like it's really breathtaking. Like the soulful prog guitar lead that picks up that main vocal line and floats it out over the latter portion, and the details in it feel so fleshed out as well, because there's parts in there that are almost like call and response between the vocal and the bass guitar, which does like this like wah effect and stuff. It's really like it really rewards paying attention to every little element and what it's doing.
Breathtaking is exactly the word, because not only is it often, you know, beautiful and sometimes even serene and bordering on peaceful, but it's so often suffocating at the same time. It's breathtaking in both senses of the word. And Ahab, for me, and I think this is best demonstrated on the first two tracks and the last one, I'm not sure the vocalist's name, but he has that thing which you quickly become accustomed to if you listen to a lot of extreme metal, or where, you know, when you first listen to a death metal band, you go, how does he sound like that? How is this a person? There are some bands which, even 10 years of listening to this sort of thing, I still get that feeling. And the guy in Ahab is the A+ example, because every time, without fail, even albums I've heard dozens of times before, I just go, it's still frightening. And that is something that I think makes them exciting as a Funeral Doom band.
But I mean, on the title track, you've got like a soft guttural, like it's sensitive and stuff. They really like, they use that lower register in certain ways, but also most Funeral Doom doesn't bring vocal melodies like this.
No.
Like The Sea is a Desert and stuff like that. Like Daniel, he's one of my favourite singers. Like, he has this emotional yearning in him when he goes for the melodies that's so potent in these kind of like huge, vast sonic landscapes. I think if you're into post-rock, there'll be something familiar in how these songs kind of move and build and progress, because Ahab have become as much about the calm as they have the storm, and the production as well. Like, they really benefit from a high fidelity recording job, because not only do like the crashing sound of chords sound so destructive and like a fucking sea monster when they go for it, but musically it's so textured and delicate. Like, you could hear a pin drop in some of these mixes, and it really lets the nuances of the music breathe and take control in a way that not all extreme metal that is based primarily in atmosphere does.
Even as someone who's like bounced off this, like, I can really appreciate the care and the craft and how, like I said, they the mix and how they, when the guitars need to sound colossal, they do, but when they have the moments of calm, and it kind of taps into that whole ocean thing of, there is beauty, there is like calm, serene oceans, and then there is storms, tidal waves, monsters of the deep. It takes you on that journey, and I think it is one of the things that I like. I can appreciate about this record, even if, again, not for me. And there's so much care, and everything is like, nothing feels like, for a long album, nothing feels like wasted or pointless or needlessly drawn out. Everything's in its place to take you on the journey.
Yeah, but I mean, like, I agree with you, Elliot, in terms of it's a bit nastier than their couple of previous, for sure, and it's heavy. Like, the riff in Colossus of the Liquid Graves just grinds along, just so thick and unstoppably, and it has like this proper like sinister death doom, snuffing out the light feel to it. Even after it introduces the clean melodies, it like doubles down on it again and gets more gutturally and weighty. And I think the structure of the album is interesting in a kind of narrative sense, because it kind of starts off with these songs that immediately smack you with a heavy riff. Like, I'm not surprised, Sam, that your favourite songs are the earlier ones on the record, because it's like it gets sucked further down like as it goes along. Like, it's absolutely an album, I think, where you have to have experienced the first bunch of songs in order to likely appreciate the second bunch, because it has that feeling of the album like losing its grip to madness and the depths and the darkness as it gets
just
further
the descent further down. Yeah.
Like,
and that's the thing, like, when you said about the choral tombs, like, that growled vocal that is really soft, it has a kind of helpless, lost feel to it, so it kind of just enhances that feeling.
Yeah, I'm like, Mobilis in Mobili, at the beginning, you can literally feel the ship like further descending beneath the water in the first couple of minutes. And then when it decides to thwack you, it's, again, terrifying. Like, the double bass, just horrible, and like the churning and the guitar bends that come after it. It's Ahab's most brutal material of their kind of second phase, proggier guys. But it's amazing how well I can feel the specific nature of this album in that as well, with the musical storytelling, because The Giant by Ahab, like you, Elliot, that's one of my favourite records, but it has this like gleaming white emptiness to it, and this like desperately sad desolation to kind of like the great white dead continent of Antarctica, as that record deals with. This one, as it goes on, it's more like claustrophobic, where you can feel like the ocean pressures on the outsides of the sub when it's getting really bastard heavy, and when it's spacious, it's kind of black and shadowy. Like, they are masters of the mind's eye to me in a way that I would compare to Mastodon or to like Cult of Luna. Like, they have mastered the sound of being lost at sea with no land around for miles and miles through metal. Like, they have this way of making their clean passages just evocative of water somehow, but they also they experiment with a few different ways they can achieve that here, because it's, on Mobilis and Mobili, it's that kind of like murky descent with shadows flitting around in the dark, which is this slightly jazzier kind of dissonant sound. Has this huge fucking chanting part that erupts at the end of that as well. But then you've got the beginning of The Sea of the Desert, which appropriately almost has this kind of like desert twang to it. It's the really, gentle kind of jazzy touch of the drums, and how the drum kit sounds in the mix with the light little snare touches and stuff, and the taps of the ride cymbal. They're like, little bits of light kind of flittering down through the ocean. It's so vivid.
It's a real skill to do all that stuff without being sort of cheesy or obvious. It's never like, oh, now we're in a rainstorm, and they turn the rainmaker over.
Chimes,
yeah. It's never that thing. It's like, when I first heard this, it was a beautiful sunny day, and I went for a hike in some woodlands, and it couldn't have been a more serene, pleasant, peaceful experience. 5 minutes into this, and it was like there was this crushing stillness. I was just like, oh, I'm all alone out here. Oh, I feel sick. My chest hurts. Like, so quickly you're transported into an unpleasant, frightening world. Like, no matter what, it's just, it's magic. And this is why they're so special. I don't know if it's the only reason, but a 7.5, 8 year wait, it sounds like it. It sounds like so much time and consideration has gone into every single instance on this record.
Yeah, and like the emotional pull for those landscapes as well. Like the way the sea as a desert progresses is so beautiful, and like Agri's Somnia goes from that kind of ocean calm to something almost triumphant. When the guitars like really start driving, it just makes me put my fist in the air. And then the maelstrom at the end, like
Yeah.
I've never read 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. I haven't seen the movie either. I didn't realise it ended that bleak. Like, there's a really great lead guitar callback to the first track on the album, which is lovely. But then it gets so suffocatingly dark, and it's just all like rested down into the abyss with these harrowing, shrieking vocals, and calling out like "Almighty God" as like the waves claim it. It's so fucking dramatic.
It's the way, like, again, like we were talking about, how they make it sound like the ocean. It's almost like the most obvious way to do it, but the way the song fades out at the end as it's being like claimed by the ocean, essentially, like so on those music, but it because you're so in on the world, it does really kind of like work. And again, like I do like the Agri Somnia almost being like the calm before the final storm of like this glimpse of like get out of it, and then the maelstrom just consuming it all. Like, again, that attention to detail, that storytelling thing is the one thing that did kind of keep me engaged with the record, even if like, and again, like I don't like, I think this record is clearly, for what it is, great, just not my thing, but having that touch to it and having that care and detail is the one thing I was like, this is, a clear thing that separates Ahab from other Funeral Doom bands that I'd probably bounce off even more.
Yeah, like it might be too slow and kind of take its time too much for you, like for Sam, but as well as being one of the very best doom bands on the planet, I think they've become one of the great prog metal bands as well, like a Mastodon or an Opeth or a Cynic or a Catatonia. Like, this is the record of the lot for me, definitely. This is the one that I'm going to continue to really be like, unearthing new treasures from as we go forward. Also, I want to quickly shout out a couple of their shirts, which are great. There's the Ahab All Harpooners Are Bastards shirt, and appropriately for us this week, there's their Obituary Rip Slowly We Row shirt. Great stuff. Listen to Ahab.